The year was 1865, and the West did not wait for the week. Dust choked the air, thick as ash from a dying fire. A girl of 14 stumbled through the desert like a loose page blown from a book no one finished reading. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, hair tangled into ropes by the wind, and her eyes held the dazed confusion of someone who'd walked too long with no water and too much grief. She dragged a body behind her, slender and slack, wrapped in a sun-bleached shawl. It was her mother. Clara May stopped walking only when her legs buckled. Her knees slammed the dirt. She didn't cry. Her tears had dried somewhere back near the jagged ridge that sliced the world in two, where the buzzards first started circling. "Ma," she whispered, her voice papery and thin. The body didn't answer. Her hand found her mother's wrist, pressed it like she'd seen her do with sick folk. There was no pulse, no warmth, just skin pulled tight over brittle bone. Her ma's face had gone strange in death. The lips curled, eyes half open, staring toward a sky that gave no sign of God. Clara rocked forward, pressing her forehead to the still chest, whispering nonsense, childish phrases, old hymns, promises she knew she couldn't keep. The sun, a white-hot brand overhead, paid no mind. She couldn't bury her. Not here. The ground was rock and clay, and Clara had no shovel. No strength. The only mercy was the shawl. She could pull it up and cover her ma's face, at least. She did it slowly, like closing a book she wasn't ready to finish. Her hands trembled as she stood. The canteen was nearly empty, 2 swallows if she rationed. She unscrewed the top, stared into it, then screwed it closed again. She could hear her mother's voice. Asterisk, keep it, Clara. Not for me. For you. Asterisk, she looked north. The distant red hills shimmered in the heat, like they'd caught fire and just hadn't realized it yet. Somewhere beyond them was the trail. Maybe, or maybe nothing, but standing still would kill her faster. Clara walked. She walked until her feet blistered and burst, walked until the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched out like lazy snakes. She muttered to herself, names, places, bits of her mother's stories. She didn't know why. Maybe to keep the ghosts away. Then she fell, face first, flat, her nose scraping sand. The world spun. Her breath came ragged. That was it. Then. That was all. She smiled, dazed. Maybe she'd see Ma again soon. Maybe dying didn't hurt so bad when you were too empty to feel it. She closed her eyes. The silence was interrupted by hooves. They beat against the ground in a slow rhythm. Purposeful. Heavy. Clara didn't move. Couldn't. The hoofbeat stopped. Leather creaked. Then a voice, a man's voice, low and rough, like dry gravel in a bucket. "Don't suppose you're alive, are you?" Clara tried to speak. Nothing came out. The man stepped closer. His boots appeared in her blurry vision, dust-caked and scarred. He crouched beside her. She felt the calloused press of fingers at her throat, checking for a pulse. Still ticking, he muttered. She forced her eyes open. The sun haloed behind his head. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, shadowing a long, weathered face. His cheeks were hollow, his eyes dark and tired. A thick rifle hung across his back, and a revolver rode his hip. She saw the handle of a Bowie knife strapped to his boot. "Water," she mouthed. He unslung his canteen, unscrewed the cap, and lifted it to her lips. Cool, wetness touched her tongue. Not much, but it was enough to keep death waiting. "I was salve on that," he said, "but I figure you need it more." Her throat burned. She coughed, then whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once. "You're welcome." He looked her over, not with lust or pity, but with the cold appraisal of someone who'd seen too many die and didn't want to waste effort on the next. Then, after a long pause, he said, "I can't carry you far, but I got a horse. He can—" "Where?" she asked. "Wherever ain't here." He lifted her like a sack of grain, gently, but not delicately. The man was all sinew and bone, but strong. He set her across the saddle of a tired-looking roan gelding and climbed up behind her. "My name's Bo," he said after a long silence. "Bo Ransom." She didn't answer. He didn't push. They rode until night. Clara drifted in and out, too weak to hold thoughts, only images, firelight, gunpowder, her father's boots, half buried in mud the day he was taken, her ma crying by a creek, a hymn in the dark. She woke to warmth. A small fire cracked nearby. Coyotes howled in the distance. Her cheeks were flushed with heat, not from the sun this time, but from life returning. Bo sat nearby, turning a tin can of beans over the flames. "Food's near ready," he said, not looking at her. She sat up slowly. Her muscles screamed. "I left Ma," she whispered. "I know." She looked at him. "You saw." "I saw the shape. Figured you weren't dragging a bedroll." Clara stared into the fire. She said not to trust easy. Said men take what they want. Bo grunted. "That true. Some men do." She glanced at him sideways. "You." He shook his head. "I take what's owed. That's it." She shifted closer to the flames, arms hugging her knees. "You gonna turn me in?" Bo chuckled once, a dry, humorless sound. "Turn you in to who? Ain't no sheriff out here. You got a bounty on your head?" She shook her head. "Then no, you're just a girl. And I ain't in the business of hunting girls." He handed her the beans. She took them, wary. They ate in silence. Night deepened. The stars flared bright above, undimmed by smoke or city gas. Clara watched them, hollowed out by grief, and yet strangely anchored by the heat of the fire and the quiet beside her. "Why'd you help me?" she asked finally. Bo didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice like cracked leather, he said, "My boy would have been your age, if he lived." She looked down. "What happened?" "Cholera. Took him and his ma both. I was off fighting a war that didn't care about either of them." He poked the fire with a stick. "By the time I got home, all that was left was ash and a note from the preacher." Clara said nothing. He looked over. "What's your name?" "Clara May." "Where were you headed?" "West. Somewhere green. Ma thought we could find work. She was a seamstress. We had a little money, but it ran dry. We got robbed near Canyon Bend. They took everything but the horse, and she died 2 days later. Ma just kept walking. And then she didn't." Bo nodded slowly. "That's the West for you. Swallows hope like water." They sat in silence again, both listening to the fire crackle. "You can sleep here," he said. "I'll keep watch." "You ain't gonna—" "No," he said flatly. "I ain't." She didn't thank him. Just lay down on the cold ground near the fire, curling her arms around herself. Sometime deep in the night, she woke to whispers, not from Bo, but from memory. Her mother's voice, faint and melodic. "Sleep, child, sleep, angels near you keep." Clara opened her eyes to see Bo still sitting by the fire, rifle across his lap, staring out at the dark. "You sleeping at all?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Sleep's for later," he said. "Right now we got coyotes and worse." "You're not scared?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm always scared. Just don't let it stop me none." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and closed her eyes again. This time, sleep took her softer. Morning came cruel and red. The fire was embers. Bo already had the horse saddled. "We'll ride west," he said. "Nearest water's that way. Maybe a mining camp if we're lucky. You ride behind me. Hold tight." She climbed up without a word. The desert rolled out before them, vast, merciless, and indifferent. Clara looked once behind her, toward the direction they'd come. Nothing but dust. She didn't cry. Not now. But something in her heart shifted. Her mother was gone. Her old life with her. But she wasn't dead. Not yet. And Bo Ransom, this strange man with grief in his bones, had given her the last drop of his water. She owed him her life. For now, that would have to be enough. They rode into the horizon. Two shadows against a land that demanded everything and gave nothing in return. But for the first time in days, Clara dared to believe in something more than just surviving. Maybe, just maybe, she'd learn to live again. The desert didn't let go easy. It clung to their clothes, their skin, their lungs, left them choked with dust and silence. Days passed like heat mirages, long, uncertain, and merciless. Bo said little. Clara said less. But step by step, mile by aching mile, something began to shift between them. Not trust, not yet, but the slow forging of something more necessary, reliance. On the third morning, they came across a rotted-out stagecoach. Its ribs were splintered, a wheel broken clean off, sun-bleached luggage strewn around like bones. Bo drew his rifle before dismounting. Clara followed his lead, crouching behind a boulder with her pistol, small and rust-flecked, but loaded. Could be bandits still picking through, Bo said low. Could be ghosts, Clara whispered. They moved slow, boots crunching in the silence. A crow burst out from under the wreckage, sending Clara's heart hammering. Bo didn't flinch. He peered inside the coach, found only scraps and a blood-stained bonnet. 2, maybe 3 bodies, he murmured, eyes scanning the ground. Been stripped? Riders hit hard and fast. He pulled a dented water flask from beneath a seat, shook it, half full. Clara's throat tightened at the sound. She reached for it, but Bo stopped her. We boil it first, he said. They camped by a cluster of mesquite trees as the sun dipped low. The fire was small, their voices smaller. You ever killed someone? Clara asked, eyes on the flames. Bo didn't look up from cleaning his rifle. Yeah. You feel it after? Inside, I mean? He nodded. If you don't, you're either dead or already too far gone. She watched the embers rise. I saw Ma shoot a man once. He came at her with a blade. She didn't wait. Dropped him in the dirt. Shook for an hour after. Your ma was smart, Bo said. Too many folks wait to be sure. That wait'll kill you. The words settled like stones between them. They crossed into rock country the next day. High cliffs rose on either side, painting long shadows. Bo was tense. Clara saw it in his eyes, the way his hand hovered near his revolver. The air felt wrong. Too still. This pass, he said, ain't been safe since the gold rush. We ride fast. They kicked their mounts into motion, hooves clattering on stone. The canyon narrowed, twisted. Wind whistled through the gaps, echoing like ghosts. Then, just as Bo rounded a bend, he yanked his reins hard. Get down, he barked. Gunfire exploded from a cliffside. A bullet zipped past Clara's ear. She dove from her horse, rolled behind a boulder. Bo returned fire, rapid and sharp. Clara peeked out, saw 2 men above, rifles aimed steady. One was shouting, You got supplies, old man. Toss him down. Bo's voice was ice. Come take him. They didn't hesitate. One moved along the ridge, trying to flank. Bo tracked him and fired. The man crumpled without a sound. The other fired again. Clara's horse screamed and went down. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Her hand shook as she lifted the pistol Bo had given her days ago. She waited for movement. Then there, a shadow above. She fired. The recoil knocked her flat. The man staggered, dropped his rifle, and tumbled down the rocks, hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. Blood bloomed beneath him. Bo stood still, rifle lowered, watching her. You all right? He asked. She nodded slowly, chest heaving. Yeah. First kill. She hesitated. I think so. He walked to the man's body, checked his pulse. Not thinking anymore. They buried the bodies under a heap of stones, quick and rough. Clara watched him wipe the blood from her pistol before handing it back. You shot clean, he said. Most folks miss their first. She didn't feel pride. Only a hollow ache in her gut. But something else crept in too, a flicker of something sharper. Strength, maybe, or the birth of it. They salvaged what they could, bullets, jerky, a torn map marked with a red X, near a place called Hollow Creek. Bo studied it under moonlight. That X might mean a hideout. Could be more like them. Or a camp, Claire said, with water. Bo gave her a look. Hope makes you careless. She didn't argue, just folded the map and tucked it into her bag. That night, neither of them slept. Coyotes howled close. The smell of blood lingered on the wind. Clara sat with her back to the fire, pistol in hand, watching the dark. Bo finally spoke. You aim to keep going with me. You better understand one thing. What's that? This trail don't end in peace. Only place it leads is survival. You ready for that? She stared into the dark, eyes hard. I already lost peace. Ma took it with her. He nodded once, said no more. By the next morning, the desert changed again. Ridges gave way to river flats. Birds circled overhead. Somewhere out there was moving water. They found it just before noon. It wasn't wide, but it ran quick, fed by snowmelt from the far-off peaks. The banks were steep, the current strong. "We cross here," Bo said. "Ain't ideal, but the next ford's 2 days south." Clara looked at the water, then at the rocks below. "If we slip?" "We don't." He tied a rope around his chest and gave her the other end. "You fall, I pull. I fall, you cut loose and get to shore." "Not gonna leave you," she said. "You might have to." They entered together. The water was ice, a shock that punched the breath from Clara's lungs. Her boots slipped on the mossy stones. Bo kept close, guiding, gripping. The current roared louder than wind, louder than blood. Halfway through, Clara's foot snagged. She pitched sideways, rope snapping tight. Bo yanked her up just as her head dipped below. She gasped, coughing, eyes wild. "Hold on," he shouted. She did. When they reached the far bank, they collapsed side by side in the reeds, soaked and shivering. Bo looked at her, hair plastered to his face. "You all right?" "I think so," she said, voice shaking. He handed her a dry cloth from his pack. She wrapped it tight around her shoulders and stared at the water they'd just crossed. "I never thought I'd make it this far." "You ain't made it yet," Bo said, "but you're getting there." They made camp under a willow tree. Bo gathered wood. Clara lit the fire with flint and steel, hands trembling but steady. She looked older now, not in her face, but in the way she moved. There was no girl left in the way she sat, eyes sharp on the shadows. Bo watched her from across the fire. "You remember what that man said?" he asked. She nodded. "Toss down your supplies. Folks'll kill for water, food, bullets, but most'll die for less." "Like what?" "Pride, revenge, a name they don't want to lose." She looked at him. "You ever kill for revenge?" He didn't answer right away. Then once, and it didn't fix a damn thing. The wind picked up. The fire hissed and danced. Somewhere an owl called. "You gonna leave me?" she asked softly. Bo stirred the fire. "That what you're scared of?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. He leaned back on his elbows. "I ain't got much left to offer, Clara May, but I ain't the leaving kind. You stick close, I'll see you through to wherever you're trying to go." She met his eyes, and after, he didn't smile, but his voice warmed just slightly. "After's up to you." That night, Clara wrote her mother's name in the dirt with the tip of her knife. Just the letters, MERTHA. She stared at them a long time before brushing them away. They broke camp early. The sun rose pale and mean behind them. The desert stretched on, but now it felt different, less endless, less cruel. Clara still didn't know where the trail led. But for the first time, she didn't dread finding out. They passed a broken signpost buried in sand. Only 2 letters remained etched in the wood. "Ho!" Bo pointed west. "Hollow Creek's that way," he said. "We get there, maybe we find work. A lead. Or just a roof. Or trouble." He nodded. "Almost certainly." Clara adjusted her satchel, checked the pistol at her side. She looked smaller than her shadow, but she stood straighter now. "I can handle trouble," she said. Bo mounted his horse and held out a hand. Clara took it, swung up behind him. They rode, without speaking, the wind whispering through the sage. Behind them, the river sang to the rocks. Ahead, the land sloped down toward something unseen. Town or ruin, peace or blood, whatever waited, they would meet it together. Clara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But today, she crossed a river, killed a man, and carved a name into the dust. And somehow, through it all, she was still standing. That was enough. For now. The sun dipped low as Bo and Clara crested the final ridge before Hollow Creek, painting the land in rust-red streaks. The town sprawled crooked in the valley below, dusty, half-board buildings leaning into the wind like old drunks. A single main street ran through it, lined with sagging saloons, dry goods stores, and false-fronted hotels. Smoke drifted from chimneys. Horses pawed dirt outside the stables. Men leaned against porch posts like they owned the sky. Clara narrowed her eyes. That don't look much like salvation. Bo didn't answer. His face had gone still. Watchful. They rode slow into town, hooves clopping over hardpan. A few heads turned. Some nodded. Others just stared. Suspicion clung to the place like flies on meat. Bo dismounted outside the smallest inn, a peeling two-story shack with a hitch rail out front and a sign that read, "Rooms, cheap, clean enough." He helped Clara down and tied the reins, eyes scanning every shadow. Inside, a half-blind woman behind the desk squinted at them. "Coin or trade," she croaked. Bo dropped a few silver bits on the counter. 2 beds. 1 night. The room was upstairs, narrow, cramped, and hot. 2 iron cots, a basin of water, a cracked window. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, watching Bo check the locks. "You think we're safe here?" she asked. "No such thing," he muttered. "But we're not dead, so that's something." He pulled a folded cloth from his coat and tossed it to her. Inside was a roll of dollar coins, wrapped tight. "Yours." Clara blinked. "What?" "You earned it. That map back in the canyon, that kill shot, this whole damn ride. Wasn't no passenger on this trail, Clara May. You pulled weight." She held the roll like it might vanish. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Start something. Like what?" He looked out the window. "A life, whatever that means to you." She opened her mouth, then shut it. The weight in her chest was unfamiliar, part pride, part fear. That evening, they stepped into the saloon. It smelled of sweat, smoke, and old whiskey. A piano man played a sour tune in the corner. Card games clacked like distant gunfire. Bo ordered stew and bread from the barkeep. Clara took hers upstairs. When Bo returned to the room, his expression had hardened. "What is it?" she asked. "Trouble." She stood. "Who?" "A man I knew. From back then." "Back when?" He sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. "War. After. Name's Tate Dillard. Used to ride bounty. Mean bastard. Knew me when I was someone else." Clara stared at him. "You think he's here for you?" "I know he is." She felt her stomach tighten. "Why now?" "Because men like Tate don't forget what they're owed. And he thinks I owe him blood." "You gonna run?" Bo looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw real conflict in his eyes. "Used to think running was survival. But I'm tired of running, Clara." She nodded once. "Then we fight." Bo grunted. "We? You think I came all this way to watch from behind a window?" A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Stubborn as your ma, I'll bet." He opened his satchel, drew out 2 pistols, a box of shells, and a long knife. He handed her one of the pistols. "You remember what I taught you?" "Don't wait to die," she said. "Good girl." They slept in shifts. Bo sat with his rifle pointed at the door. Clara stared at the ceiling, heart hammering too fast to rest. The walls creaked with the weight of wind and bad dreams. Sometime before dawn, the shot came. It cracked through the window, glass shattering across Clara's bed. Bo hit the floor, rolled, fired twice through the hole where the window used to be. Clara crouched, pistol aimed, breath ragged. Bo motioned to the door. "Backstairs. Go." "I'm not leaving you." "Wasn't a request." Another shot punched into the wall. Clara dashed for the hallway. Behind her, Bo fired again, sharp, controlled. She tore down the stairs, burst out into the alley. 2 shapes moved in the dark. She dropped low, raised her pistol, and squeezed the trigger. Click. Misfire. One of the men turned. A rifle lifted. Then Bo's voice thundered behind her. "Down." She hit the dirt. Bo fired. The man spun, hit the ground hard. The second figure fled. Bo pulled Clara up. "You all right?" "Gun jammed." "Throw it next time." They didn't wait for morning. They packed fast, left town on foot with only what they could carry. Bo's horse had taken a bullet. Clara's was still breathing, so she rode, and he walked. They didn't talk much for the next mile. When the sky brightened to pale orange, Bo stopped. "Trail splits here," he said. Clara looked to the fork. One path led into pine country, cool and shaded. The other veered toward the plains. "Which way you going?" Bo hesitated. "Reckon I'll follow the plains. Head for Durango. Maybe work a ranch, lay low." She didn't move. You got what you need, he said. Coin, gun, grit. You keep west, maybe find Shulin, or a preacher willing to lie about your age so you can find work. She stared at him. You leaving me? He shook his head. I'm letting you go. Silence stretched between them. I don't want to go alone, she whispered. Bo stepped close, rested a hand on her shoulder. You ain't alone. Not really. Every mile of dust you walked, every night you didn't break, that's with you now. And I'll be there too, somewhere. Just not where you can see. Clara swallowed hard. I won't forget. I know. She hugged him. He didn't flinch, just held her back firm and warm. Write it down, he said. What you saw, what you lost, what you became. She nodded, wiped her eyes. Then she turned and rode west. Bo stood watching until she disappeared behind their eyes. Later, much later, Clara sat beneath a cottonwood tree outside a schoolhouse 2 towns over. Dust clung to her boots. Her coat was too big, her fingers calloused from writing. She held a journal in her lap, the leather cover worn soft from handling. She wrote, my name is Clara May, and I crossed a desert with a dead mother and nothing but stubborn fire in my chest. I met a man who gave me water when he had none to spare, and he taught me how to survive the West without losing the parts of me that mattered. I killed. I crossed rivers. I faced men with blood in their eyes. And I lived. Maybe that's enough. She closed the book, the wind tugging at her hair. A voice called from the schoolhouse porch. You want a job or just plan to sit and look pitiful? She stood. What kind of job? Teaching, if you can read better than my last drunk hire. Clara walked forward. Steady. I can. Behind her, the wind carried dust and memories. But ahead, there was only sky. And that was hers now. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The West doesn't care if you're good or right, or even ready. It only cares if you keep walking, if you fall and get up, if you bleed and still find a way to speak. If Clara's story lit a fire in your chest, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every voice matters, especially the ones that rise from dust. The desert wind carried with it the stench of blood and betrayal. Bo crouched low behind the jagged outcrop of red rock, his rifle tucked tight against his shoulder. The rising sun painted the mesa in bruised oranges and golds, casting long, crawling shadows that made everything look alive. Sweat ran down his neck, soaked into the collar of his shirt. 3 days ago, he'd sent Clara off on that westward trail with his blessing, hoping distance would keep her safe. But she wasn't gone more than 24 hours before he found her horse riderless and bleeding on the edge of a canyon creek. Now he was hunting again, not for food, not for coin. For vengeance. Tate Dillard had taken the girl, likely thinking he'd draw Bo out. He wasn't wrong. Bo hadn't spoken since. Just rode hard. Followed signs. A broken strap here, a knotted cloth snagged on mesquite. Clara was smart. Tough. She left what trail she could without giving herself away. Every scrap of evidence told Bo the same story. She was alive, but not for long if he didn't move fast. He scanned the ravine below. The campfire smoke was faint but real. Dillard and 2 others sat near the flames, eating cold beans, rifles leaning against a boulder. Clara was tied to a post, her face smudged with dust and blood. But her eyes, those were clear. Fierce. Bo steadied his breath, chamber round. This time it would end. He didn't believe in redemption anymore, but he believed in debts, and Dillard owed more than he could ever repay. The first shot cracked like thunder. One of the men dropped where he sat, jaw shattering in an explosion of blood and bone. The second man scrambled for his rifle, but Bo was already moving, sliding down the rock face with practiced speed. Each step calculated, silent. Another shot. Missed. Bo pivoted left, rifle raised. The second outlaw found cover behind a log. Clara shouted something he couldn't hear over the pulse pounding in his ears. Dillard stood calmly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, then turning toward Clara like nothing had happened. He crouched beside her and said something that made her flinch. Bo felt his blood boil. He charged the camp, firing once, twice, missed again. The second outlaw broke from behind the log, bolting toward the horses. Bo spun, shot him in the back. The man collapsed, twitching. Dillard pulled Clara up by the hair, dragging her backward with a pistol pressed to her temple. "Easy now," he called, voice oily with calm. "You come any closer, I'll paint this dust with her brains." Bo halted 10 feet away, rifle held waist high. His eyes met Clara's. There was no fear there, just fury. "She ain't yours to touch," Bo said evenly. "She was yours to protect. You failed." Dillard grinned. "You know, I always wondered what happened to the preacher's favorite bastard. Look at you playing hero now. But you ain't no savior. You're a killer just like me." Bo didn't blink. "You always did talk too much." He dropped the rifle and raised his hands. Dillard tilted his head. "That easy. I'm tired." Bo stepped closer. Clara watched, unmoving, hand still bound. Her fingers twitched. Dillard sneered. "Thought you'd have more fight left." Bo nodded. "I do." And then he moved. Quicker than breath, he drew the knife from his boot and hurled it. The blade spun end over end and sank deep into Dillard's thigh. The man howled, staggered, squeezing the trigger. But Clara was already ducking low, driving her knee into his groin, teeth bared. He fell sideways, clutching his leg, gun tumbling from his grasp. Bo was on him in a heartbeat. A fist cracked across Dillard's jaw. Another, and another. Years of silence, pain, guilt, all of it poured into each strike. Dillard fought back, fists wild, but Bo was relentless. He beat the man until blood smeared the rocks and silence fell over the ravine like a death shroud. Finally, Bo stood, chest heaving. Dillard groaned, crawling toward the edge of the fire pit. Bo raised the pistol. "No," Claire said softly. Bo turned. "Let me—" She knelt beside Dillard, picked up his fallen revolver, and stared at the man who had stolen her mother her peace and tried to steal what little future she had left. "Please," she said again, eyes meeting Bo's. He nodded. Clara lifted the gun. Dillard whimpered, "You ain't got the stones." She pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the canyon. When it faded, all that remained was the wind. Bo helped her up, gently brushing dust from her cheek. "You all right?" "No," she said, "but I will be." They buried the bodies without ceremony, using rocks and silence. By dusk, they rode out of the ravine together, neither speaking, both knowing there was no going back to the quiet life they'd imagined. In the town of Gallows Post, they found an abandoned chapel on the edge of a ridge. It leaned like an old drunk, but the bell still rang when the wind struck, just right. Bo fixed the roof. Clara painted the walls. They didn't call it home, but it was close enough. Bo taught Clara to read scripture again, not for salvation, but for strength. She practiced shooting every morning at dawn, and when travelers passed by the chapel seeking food or water, she looked them in the eye and asked questions no child ever should have to. A year passed. The land healed. So did they. One night, as a storm rolled in, Clara stood by the window, watching lightning rip across the sky. "You ever think he was right?" she asked. Bo looked up from the fire. "Who?" "Dillard. About you." Bo considered it a long time. "I was what he said. I'm not anymore." "What changed?" "You." Clara turned, eyes searching. "You think I'll ever stop seeing his face?" "No," he said, "but one day it won't own you." She walked over, knelt beside him. "You ever wish I'd just stayed gone? That you didn't have to save me?" He smiled, soft and worn. "No, I wish I'd found you sooner." The fire cracked. Outside, rain began to fall. In the distance, the land whispered promises of peace, of trials yet to come. But inside, the two sat in silence. Not broken, not whole, but alive. And for now, that was enough. Because the West had taken so much from them. And, at last, they'd taken something back.